Level 2. Press Enter.
Good evening, and welcome to the first official episode of Return to the Ohms with your host, the Yeti. Also, the Yeti from the Salt Happens podcast group, Salt Happens Productions or Media, whatever you want to call us. I'd like to welcome you to this evening on an awkward but yet insightful adventure and journey. So, yes, I have weird sunglasses on because I like them. It doesn't have to be any other reason other than that. I like them, and my eyes get sensitive to light, especially staring at a computer screen and this big old bright light, and it hurts my eyes, and I'll probably take them off here in a little bit, and you will notice me playing with this because this will help me stay calm. This is actually a pretty cool device. I love it. Keep it with me. So, what should we talk about tonight? Well, there's a lot of stuff I want to get off my mind, a lot of stuff I want to dig into, and I've gone back and forth the past couple weeks on what I want to speak about. I didn't want to come in here and immediately run people off thinking that you're going to have to put on your tinfoil hats, you're going to have to hear about flat earth and frogs and all this lizard people kind of stuff, which probably will happen eventually. I'm not going to lie to you. However, tonight I feel I'm just going to kind of take it easy. I'm going to kind of take it down a path that has some credibility to it. So tonight, I'd like to invite you to discuss the UFO over Illinois phenomenon. And why it's a phenomenon is because there are hundreds of witnesses for this particular case, lots of collaboration between the local police departments in the area, and lots of evidence, lots of audio evidence, photography. It's a substantial case that I witnessed with my own eyes. So, to begin this, let's go ahead and give a little bit of a backstory as to exactly what happened. So I have this pulled up here. The St. Clair Triangle UFO over Illinois, Southern Illinois UFO or Highland Illinois UFO sighting occurred on January 5th, 2000, over the towns of Highland, Dupo, Lebanon, Shiloh, Summerfield, and Millstadt, and O'Fallon. Now, that's not the entire list. This is what is written here in the Wikipedia for this. So, of course, I understand you can't take everything that Wikipedia gives you as fact. However, I will concur with this, that these areas that are being spoken about in here did in fact take part in this mass witness. So there was a lot of other towns though. Collinsville, Maryville, Glen Carbon, and Edwardsville had sightings. So it was a massive area that this UFO was witnessed. Says beginning shortly after 4 a.m. This is something that's disputed because my story is going to kind of tear apart a little bit of this. What's written here. So 4 a.m., 5 on-duty police officers around these locales, along with various other eyewitnesses, cited and reported a massive, silent, triangular craft operating at an unusual treetop level altitude and speed. One of the police officers even managed to get a single yet ambiguous Polaroid photograph of the object. The incident was examined in various television shows, including the ABC special, Seeing is Believing, an hour-long Discovery Channel special, UFO Over Illinois, and an episode of the sci-fi series Proof Positive, as well as a half-hour-long independent documentary titled The Edge of Reality, Illinois UFO. So, that's pretty much what it gives you here. So if you want, you can look up a lot of these documentaries yourself. You can go ahead and go online and do your due diligent research and find out about a lot of this stuff for yourself. I witnessed this thing firsthand, and I believe I may have witnessed it closer than any other person. So, Before I begin and I give you my encounter, let us make some stipulations here. First, I will not lie to you, the viewer or the listener. I will not lie to you. I have no reason to. I have nothing to gain or lose from lying to you. If I lose viewership, then so be it. I already have no viewership as it is. If I gain viewership, then that just means I have more chance for, criticism and hate and spam and all this kind of stuff. So to kind of bolster the fact and let you know that I'm not going to be lying, I've already been ridiculed in my life for a majority of the content and stories that I will give you from my personal accounts during this series. So I'm already used to the criticism and the backlash and the all of that. I'm used to it at this point, and it doesn't really faze me anymore. I've already lost friends over it. Yes, I've lost friends over these things in my life, and it is what it is. So my encounter begins, I guess it would be around the same day. I would have to pull up a calendar, but I know it was during the week because it was a school night. And it was about 6 o'clock in the evening. The sun was setting, the sun was going down. It wasn't cold, but it was kind of crisp outside. And when does it say it was? So we're January. So yeah, which already doesn't make sense because it really wasn't cold outside. Anyways, I'm going to make another stipulation before I tell you this. A disclaimer. Now, on this particular evening, I did consume cannabis. I was using cannabis. However, for any of you that have used cannabis, you understand that it's not a hallucinogen. You're not seeing things that aren't there. It doesn't work like that. At the time, I had a huge tolerance for cannabis. So it is what it is. If you don't want to believe it, and you want to discredit the story because of that, then so be it. That's your right. So here we go. So it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was hanging out with a friend. I'll leave his name out. And we decided to go to an area of woods behind the local Walmart shopping center. At the time, I lived in Collinsville. The Walmart was located on Beltline Road. At the time, it was the old one. And behind it, you had, of course, the drive for all the vehicles to load and unload, and then you had a grass field with woods. Now, this is before they had all the housing development behind it, the apartments and all this kind of stuff. So there's this massive amount of woods between my house and Walmart and the shopping center and stuff. And these woods had lots of different little tree houses and cool things. At one point, the property had been a golf course that had been overgrown, and they changed it around, and they had built a park in it. So it was commonly traveled. There were pathways that we used to take, and it was a shortcut to get to a lot of the stores. So we decided to go there this evening to smoke, cannabis, and to do some other stuff that I'll get into later in the series. For the time being, though, we went to this area. There is going to be a specific thing that I leave out of this story. So for any of you that have already heard this and you're wondering where this part may be, I'm going to leave that for a later time because I don't need this story to branch off any more than it already has. So we headed to the park. We were behind Walmart at the time. So Walmart was, over this direction. It wasn't very far. There was a clearing of trees in front of us. We were standing on this hill. Now, for some reason, at the bottom of this hill, at the edge of the tree line, there were 6 or 7 wooden stumps that came up out of the ground like pillars. Nobody ever knew why they were there. They definitely weren't part of the golf course. They looked really old. But anyways, we were standing there, and we heard the sound of electricity. So for any of you that's been to the ocean and you've heard the waves, how it's just kind of this cycle, it's very pleasing sound that just continues to come over and over and over. Now imagine that, but with an electrical wave. like a hum. So through the trees, we couldn't see anything yet at this point. The sun was setting behind us, and we were looking towards the trees, and we heard this electrical hum getting louder and louder and louder until all of a sudden it broke across the tree line. Now, mind you, these trees were like maybe 100 feet, I don't know, something like that. And the first part of it poked out, this huge black triangle just came across the tree line right over our heads, and it slowed down and stopped right above us. The craziest part was that we were able to see the details. We were able to see every detail of the ship. That's the only thing I can describe it as. It was not a B-2 bomber. It was not one of those metallic triangular shaped airplanes. It was not that. This was a boomerang shaped object that had, the only way I've ever been able to describe it was like snakeskin. The entire thing was covered in metallic, black, oily looking snakeskin. It all looked like an oil slick. And around the outer edges of it, it was covered in like a flowing LED rainbow all around it. And the colors moved. And I know this sounds wild. I know it sounds crazy. And I don't think anyone else has the same account that I have of this ship the same way. But the material, like I said, was like a black metallic snake skin, and it was oily. It just looked like it was covered in oil slick everywhere. So now it's time to get a little bit weird. If this isn't weird enough for you, it gets a little bit weirder. So as it's coming over the tree line, the sound begins to just envelop both of us, me and my friend. He's on my right at the time. And the electrical sound began to just take over. Like it was surrounding us. Kind of like when you have heavy bass coming from a stereo and the vibrations just fill your body. Only this time it wasn't taking my breath away or messing with my chest or heart or anything like that. It was like showering us in electrical whatever. And I look over to my friend, and he is completely frozen solid. He is like a mannequin, just. And I'm like, okay, so he's in shock. Me, on the other hand, I'm like excited. I'm like, I've been waiting my whole life. You know, I'm a young kid, of course, but I've been waiting so many years to see this right now. And I'm like, oh my God, look at this. And I'm shaking him like, you see this? You know, look at this. Look, you see it? And he just looks at me and he's like, and he's just breathing. He won't say anything. He won't move his head. He's terrified. So the whole time that this thing is getting closer to us and it stops above our heads, it was close enough that I could have taken a pellet rifle and shot it. That's how close this thing was. You could feel some kind of mental thought process that this was projecting. Now, it didn't seem sinister, but it didn't seem nice. It didn't have some kind of like, we're going to kill you or abduct you and use an anal probe on you and all this kind of stuff. It didn't do any of this. But it had a mental feeling to it. Like when you meet somebody and they're acting a little bit weird and you're kind of picking up on all of their signals and stuff. This ship was doing that. It was getting into our brains, and we were able to kind of like, I don't know. And I truthfully believe that this ship was communicating to my friend, which was terrifying him, apparently. So I don't remember exactly what happened, but it became ominous eventually as it just hovered there. It began to kind of like, you could feel it searching you. This is a very uncomfortable thing for me to talk about right now because it is so outlandish. It is very wild. It is very over the top. But towards the end of it being above us, it began to just like search us. And you could feel it going into your thoughts. You could feel it going throughout your body. And it's unpleasant. Because it's like, this is supposed to be private. You know what I'm saying? Anything here is supposed to be sacred. This is our temple. we protect it. We don't allow things into it other than what we put into it, of course, like poisons and cigarettes and all this kind of crap. I get it. But this thing was able to penetrate and permeate our minds. We freaked out. I was excited, beginning to freak out. He was completely frozen solid. He wouldn't move or anything. So at this point, I was yelling at this thing. I'm like, leave. I was like, go. So it did. It began to move on again. But I swear to you, this thing moved as fast as somebody just chilling on a bike, just gliding down the road, just kind of barely pedaling, just kind of chilling, hanging out on a bicycle. It wasn't going very fast at all. It finally goes out of distance. Now, the odd thing about this is that it was at a high enough elevation to where people on the main road on Beltline at the time could have seen this object, and probably did see this object from where they were at. At the angle that this thing was in the elevation, they would have been able to see it down there on that road. And I mean, I don't remember hearing or even reading about any reports in Collinsville. So I look over at him like, yo, like, what do you want? Let's go back to my house. And he was like, no. He stops me dead in my communication. And he said, no, I got to go home. And I'm like, what do you mean, bro? I was like, what are you talking about, man? I was like, why? He's like, I have to go home. He won't explain to me. He's refusing to tell me what's going on. He wouldn't tell me anything. He was like, it was talking to me. I'm freaked out and I want to go home. That's all I could get out of him. And even though I was being persistent, he wouldn't give me any more information. So I was like, all right, man. I was like, all right, I'll see you at school tomorrow. And I go home. The entire night, I am wide awake, drawing pictures of what I had seen, just reliving this moment over and over in my mind. It's just one of those things that was so crazy and so out of the ordinary and unreal that I relived it that entire night. And I couldn't wait to go to school in the morning and tell everybody and be like, dude, look, you're not going to believe what we saw. And I had a friend that was able to collaborate it with me. I had somebody that witnessed it with me. This was real. I get up in the next morning. Somehow I was able to sleep. I get up. I go to school. I search for him. I look everywhere. He's not at school this day. Nowhere to be found. So I began to go throughout the classes and school, and I'm telling everybody about this. Hey, I saw a UFO yesterday. It was crazy. It was really close. Blah, blah, blah. I went through the whole story, the whole scenario. Everyone is laughing at me. I'm in the laughing stock, and I can't blame them because I'll have outlandish it is. I can't blame them for that. So, be doing what a kid does. At the time, I was like, no. I was like, you've got to believe me. I was like, dude was here. I gave him so-and-so was there with me. I guess I can give you his first name. His name was Jason. I was like, Jason was there with me. He saw it. He witnessed it. He knew what happened. And I was like, dude, to some of my main friends, I'm like, look, whenever we go out of here, whenever we get out of school today, let's go over there. We'll go by his house. Let's get him to come out. I'll ask him and he'll prove it. He'll set it right. I was like, dude, just trust me. He'll set it right. It's going to be okay. I get through school that day. We leave. Everybody meets up down the road from Jason's house. We go over there. His mom answers the door. I'm like, hey, is Jason here? He wasn't at school today, and I wanted to ask him some questions and stuff, and I was like, just wanted to hang out or whatever. He can't come outside right now. I was like, okay, is he grounded or something? Is he sick? And she's like, he just doesn't want to talk to anybody right now. I was like, okay. I was like, could you do it, please? And I was being a little brat at the time. So she gets upset. She goes and gets him. She's yelling at him. He comes to the door, and there's no smile on his face whatsoever. He is completely emotionless. And I'm like, hey. I was like, dude, I was telling everybody about what we saw last night. I was like, dude, tell them that I'm not lying. Tell them what we saw. He looks at me and he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about, Jeff. He's like, I was sick last night. He was like, I stayed in bed sick all night, and that's why I didn't go to school today, is because I was sick all night last night. And I looked at him, I was like, you're fucking lying. I said, dude, we hung out last night for like 3 hours at my house and then went to the park. Tell them the fucking truth. He's like, dude, I never saw you last night. I never hung out with you. So then these motherfuckers were like, oh, whatever, we're out. At this point, I lost all credibility. Zero credibility was left. So I look at this man and I'm like, you know, I give him peace of my mind. I leave. And I go about my life. The only problem with this was that I began to question everything. Did I get high? Am I schizophrenic? Am I having like a lapse of reality? Like, what is going on? Because I know it was real. Like, I saw it with my own eyes. He was there. And I, as a teenager, I started to question everything at this point. I was like, dude, there's no way that this happened. And he's just going to completely lie about everything. As a matter of fact, after I have brought this up in the past, I slowly remember him not being at school anymore after that. And I find that really peculiar and odd. So, you know, over the course of the next year, I think it was, I had just kind of allowed it to move out of my mind and not think about it anymore. And, you know, it was just one of those things. At the time, I don't think I really had internet either. I didn't, 2000, I don't think I had a computer with internet or anything. So it wasn't like I went home and I'm like, you know, all over the internet, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, so I wasn't taking pictures of it. It just was like it never happened. So it just kind of left my mind. Fast forward however long, I am sitting with my ex at the time, smoking yet again because I had smoked. And I had told her this story numerous times. And I got, you know, the same reception. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, okay, yeah. So I'm sitting there watching TV, and the documentary UFO Over Illinois comes on. And I'm like, hold up. Let me see the info on this. So I'm reading the info, and I'm like, Shiloh? I was like, no way. I was like, there's no way it could be. I watched this entire documentary. And I'm just fucking blown away. I'm astounded. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing with my own eyes on TV. She was dumbfounded. She's just in shock. She's like, this is unreal. She's like, you were telling the truth. All these cops, they were driving. I apologize. They were driving around and they would pull over. And there's audio somewhere. I would have to dig for it a little bit, but you can find the audio of the sheriffs calling into dispatch reporting the object. So, automatically, one of the things that people try to do to dismiss or dispute this encounter and this case is the fact that there is an Air Force base, Scott Air Force Base, located about 45 minutes from where everybody had witnessed this. They were like, oh, it must have been a test, you know, it was a secret military test, all this kind of stuff, you know, whatever. Sure. And I'm not discrediting that. Sure, it could have absolutely been some kind of drone. They say that, you know, any technology that we have, the government's ahead of by 50 years or more. So, sure. It's a possibility. Absolutely. I'm not going to say it's not. It's absolutely possible that this could have been some kind of military test device or ship or whatever. But I'm telling you that snake skin, metallic snake skin, and with oil and these luminescent lights, the sound that it was making, the ability to hover, there are a lot of these things, even from some of the top secret things that we see on conspiracies on the internet and things like that. Nothing comes close to this level of advanced technology. So even whenever somebody blows the whistle, so to speak, quote unquote, and they let something slip and they're like, oh, look at this top secret aircraft. Nothing like that has even come close to the technology that this was. This didn't even look thick enough for somebody to be inside of driving. This would have had to have been like a drone or something. I don't know. So it automatically gets discredited and dismissed because of Scott Air Force Base. So one of the first police officers that called dispatch also asked to call Scott Air Force Base. They wanted to notify the radio tower. And Scott Air Force Base, of course, response was that no, they didn't have anybody off base at the time. There were no drills. Nobody was flying around. There was nothing reported on their radar. This is where discrepancy comes in, though. Because if you research this, you're going to find two different stories. You're going to find a story that says that Scott Air Force Base denies anything. They know nothing. There was nobody out that night flying. There was nobody out doing drills. But then you're going to find another one where it's reported that at first, the first night that this happened, they did respond to, I think it was a Shiloh or Highland Police Department, and said that there was something that they were tracking on the radar, but it was not theirs. And they were trying to figure out what it was. So, who the fuck knows? I don't know what it was, but I witnessed it with my own eyes, and I've never seen anything like it. And for all this time to pass, and then for me to see this documentary, and for me to kind of get a little bit of validation and validation for this, it was a nice feeling. But then it brought it back up in my life, and I was like, okay, so this is really weird, because this thing was right above my head. I could feel it. You know, I've told quite a few people this story before. I've even uploaded this on my YouTube before. And the first time I did it, I had some people that one person wanted to interview me and collaborate and wanted to talk about it. I've had a couple other people discredit it, and I took it down, and then I re-uploaded it about 3 years ago, and it received the same thing: dislikes, people hating on it, etc. It is what the fuck it is. I saw what I saw. I wasn't hallucinating. It's got its own documentary. It fucking happened. I seen what I seen, saw what I saw. So it is what it is. So I guess to end this one, this is not the only UFO encounter that I've personally had. I've had several. Now, I hear and I read that a lot of people can go their entire life without even one UFO encounter. But I've had several. This one kind of messes with me too. So this time I was with my mother. We went to shop and save. We pull up in the drive or in the parking lot or whatever, and there is a gigantic bright ball of white light up in the sky. It couldn't have been very far. It was definitely in our atmosphere. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't this was a long time ago. This wasn't a drone or a candle. This was a ball of white light. We get out of the car, and I'm like, I'm stunned. I'm looking at it. My mom looks at it, and she's like, "What is that?" She goes, "It must be a star or something." I said, "No, it's not a star." And as soon as I said that, this thing was like, whoop, it just does one of those. It moves about, 100 feet to the left. And she saw that. She looked at it and saw that it was, that's got to be something, a plane or something. I'm like, that's not a plane. Planes don't hover and then whoop, like this, and then back, and then take off. Because that's exactly what this did. It's sitting here. It goes whoop, whoop, back, and then whoop, just takes right off into the distance, like it never happened. She will not admit to that. Which is a problem that I have run into numerous times in my life. There's a person that I lived with for quite a while that witnessed a UFO with me. And their response was one of the most dramatic that I've ever had in my life, that I've ever encountered. And it was to actually deny themselves the fact that it happened. So they witnessed it, I witnessed it. It wasn't anything like this. It was just kind of like one of those orbs of light. And this person was like, no, I don't believe in aliens. And I was like, but you just saw it with your own eyes. And they were like, no, I didn't. I don't want to talk about it. Leave it alone. It freaks me out. Then there was another time I was over at my friend's house in the same city, Collinsville. And he had gone inside to get a drink. I was laying on the trampoline. I'm just watching the sky. And this red ball of light comes screeching through the sky. I thought it was a meteor or a comet or something at first, and it stops. It starts to move around a little bit left to right, and then it goes on the same projectile path, and you could hear it audibly hit somewhere off in the distance. And I remember getting on my bike the day after that, trying to go in the direction that I found it, and I never could find anything. I never was able to track that down. So that was another one that I've seen. Man, there's so many encounters. Me and my son were at our mother-in-law's house, or my mother-in-law's house, a few years back, and we were outside catching lightning bugs, and he was literally talking to me. He was talking to me about UFOs at the time. He's like, I want to see one so bad, and I was like, it's like, well, I'll just have to take you out one night, and we'll just lay on the back of the car or something and stare at the sky. I was like, you never know what you'll see. So, as sure as day, as soon as he said that, he's looking up out over the pasture, and this huge ball of green light, just green, just comes into focus, like it just came out of nowhere to the distance. It hovers there. It goes like this, comes down, he's watching it, and it just takes off. So he freaked out, though. He was really young at the time. He wasn't mentally prepared for that. I'm still not mentally prepared for it. I think I've dealt with it and had it in my brain for so long that it doesn't really faze me anymore. Like when I first witnessed the first UFO, I was kind of in shock for a long time. I was like, it kind of breaks your brain. It shatters every kind of structure that you've built in your brain as a child if you haven't accepted that there's other creatures and other things going on in this world. And it doesn't have to mean that there are extraterrestrials flying around our planet. That's not what I'm concluding. That's not what I'm suggesting. But it does kind of shatter that fantasy world that you live in as a child. That there is more out there than meets the eye. There absolutely is. Because most of the time you live your life and you go through and nowadays we're looking at our cell phones, we're talking to people, we eat food, we watch TV and movies, and we live our life, and we don't really think and take time to question outside of the box. Why are we here? What is the meaning of all this? What is the purpose of everything? What created us? Did we create ourselves? Who created us? We don't ask these questions in our life nearly enough. And sure, there are some of you out there that probably do. But I think the overall mentality of this planet is to not question those things and to just live your life. Don't make waves. Don't poke things that don't need to be messed with. Don't draw attention to yourself. And speaking of not drawing attention to yourself, part of the reason that I have taken so long to produce content for this channel is in fear of creating attention for myself. What I mean is that at my previous job, I had a lot of free time. I was able to record quite a bit of content and discuss topics on a podcast. I got to a point in a subject that started also getting traction in some communities and forums online with conspiracy theories and things like that. And people were starting to come to the same conclusion that I had reached by myself while studying this. And some of those people that were researching some of these things vanished. Now, that doesn't mean somebody I personally know or people in my life or anything, but people that were, on top of the research, on top of unraveling some of the stuff that we were digging into, started to disappear, started to just kind of vanish from the scene, and nobody had heard from them. So, I had to ask myself, is sharing truth and light worth endangering my family? Now, if it was just myself and it was only me that I was endangering, I would have no problem. But I am responsible for multiple lives, and I am not going to make the decision for them and risk their lives. So, depending on how this is received and depending on what happens and where I go and who I get on the show with me and who I get to talk to, I think I'm going to tread a little bit lightly. UFO encounters are one thing and they can be easily dismissed. It was swamp gas that had reflected off of Mercury and hit a weather balloon at a right angle, causing mass hysteria. Things like that. So, this has been Return to the Ohms. I want you to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't like it, go ahead and at least give me a thumbs down. If you do like it, then hit the like button. It only takes a second. If you like what you hear and you like the kind of vibe that this may be putting out, it's only going to get better. This is me taking a step. This is me trying to open up and get some things moving and feel around and get, a grasp of what I'm doing here and trying to not over talk and become dry and loop as many times. So don't forget to hit that like, comment down below, and subscribe. Going forward, I would like to formally invite and open an invitation to any of you that have encounters or experiences with paranormal things, ghosts, religious, spiritual, or just revelations of life in general. If you have something that you've figured out and put a puzzle together in your life that you think other people are missing pieces for, reach out to me, send me a message, comment on this video, and let's get together, let's talk, let's start to bring some of these puzzles together and put these pieces together for the rest of this world, because I feel truthfully in my heart that this world is covered in darkness. And that doesn't mean evil, it doesn't mean demonic forces, or does it? It could. But I feel that sometimes we need to try and help illuminate things. We need to illuminate the way for others. And I believe that a lot of us have light inside of us. A lot of us have answers. Knowledge and wisdom can also be light and illumination. It can lead the way for others. Because if somebody has already figured something out, a certain path, or a secret, or a conspiracy, or a riddle, or a puzzle, right? And they have the answers for that. Then by giving that and sharing that with others, they are illuminating the right path for them as well. There's no point in walking the path by yourself. It's time to share this adventure with the rest of the world. So, instead of dragging this on any longer, I would like to thank each and every one of you for sticking around, fast forwarding or rewinding, or skipping, or hating, commenting, whatever. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to my story this evening and then hearing me out. And I hope that you could make some conclusions yourself, or possibly even research some of the things that we talked about tonight. Always, always question. Don't be paranoid, but always question and test the things that you have in your life. Because when you think that you understand life and that you have everything figured out, just remember that there is other things outside of that world and that structure that you live in that don't make sense, that don't fit into the laws of science and of this world. There most definitely is something else out there, something greater, something larger than all of us. And that is the goal of this program, is to figure out and shed some light on some of these things. So again, thank you for spending some time with me. This has been your host, The Yeti, for the Return of the Ohms. Look forward to hearing more from me, and it's definitely going to get a lot darker and a lot weirder. We're going to dive into some serious issues. We're going to dive into some paranormal issues, some ghostly things, demonic, black magic, spirituality, religion, all of the good stuff that people don't tend to want to talk about. It's going to happen. Tune in next week to find out what we're going to talk about, and I hope to have some of you join me. So again, remember, don't be toxic, be mindful. Peace.
Thank you.